Hi, and welcome back to another of my series of first strokes, which I'm doing on a weekly basis here, just going through a lot of the basic information that people need when they're trying to get started. So if you're new to painting or been painting a little while, but kind of still have a lot of questions about different things, this series is going to be very helpful to you. But what we've done 2 prior weeks. This is only the third installment, but what we are doing is we're just starting at the very beginning for someone who's just starting to paint. And each week we will progress into more and more in depth into this whole wonderful experience of being a painter. But we're starting with just some real basic things here, first of all. So today, what I thought we would talk about is palettes, because if you're going to be a painter, you're going to need something to put your paint on and to mix your paint on before you put it on to your canvas or your paper, whatever surface you're working on. And some artists just take paint out of a tube and put it directly on their canvas. That's fine too. But sometimes you want to mix and you want to get the right amount on your brush, and you just need a place where you can kind of manipulate that. And the palette is the way artists have done that throughout time. But different mediums have different solutions for how we approach that. And as primarily a water-based painter, acrylic, and sometimes watercolor, I tend to use palettes that serve my purposes, and which might be different than what, say, an oil painter would use. So I'm going to show you some of those things today and just give you a flavor, and then you make your own decision, your own choices about what's going to be right for you. Because if you're painting with watercolor, for example, you might, when you're in your studio or your whatever space you like to work in indoors, you might have one of these big palettes that have all these individual wells, right? And they're great because you can put your watercolor paint in here, you dip your brush in, and you can mix here in the middle. And some have a divider, or some have multiple dividers where you can mix different colors of watercolor when you're painting. These are great for watercolor, but these are not so great for acrylic. I'll explain why in a second. You also might use one of these, I don't know what you call these exactly. I call it a butcher tray. It's metal, and it has a white surface, and I don't know if it's kind of a ceramic or just a painted powder coated surface. But you can get these at your, I don't know, restaurant supply kind of places, anywhere that serves sort of food service kind of products, because I think that's what this is made for. But it's a great tool. I use this mostly these days for watercolor because I don't necessarily like working with the wells. I just squeeze my paint out around the edges of this thing, and I mix in the middle, and it works really well for me. I have a few tubes already laying in here, but that's a product that works really well for watercolor also. And then they make lots of smaller, little more portable watercolor palettes, and you've all seen those, and we don't need to talk about those today. But the reason why we don't use this particular plastic palette for our acrylic painting is this kind of hard plastic. Usually acrylic paint will stick to it permanently. You won't be able to remove the paint when it dries. So it's just going to build up, and pretty soon your palette's going to be not very functional for you, not very useful for you, because you're just going to build up all that acrylic paint on it and not be able to peel it off of there. But if you use something that's a softer plastic, like I'll show you in a minute here, that'll work better for your acrylic paint. So don't use these for your acrylics. I believe they do make an acrylic palette nowadays, maybe one that has wells that works for acrylic, because you can peel the paint off of it when it's dry. But I'll show you how I handle that in a couple minutes here. So now you can also use for acrylic, if you've ever been to any of the paint and sip kind of parties, those wine and painting, or how they call them, they're, the great painter, or whatever they call them. There's a million different names of those kinds of places, but they will always give you one of these. They'll give you a styrofoam plate, that you can buy at any store where you buy household goods, and they come in different sizes. And these work fine. You can put your acrylic paint on, and you can mix them. But it's the same story as the plastic palette that I just showed you. The paint's going to stick on there permanently when it dries, which is fine because these are disposable. You're going to throw these away anyway when you're done. So these are okay. You can use these, but these aren't what I use, generally speaking. I like to use something more, and see, here's what those, by the way, those paper or styrofoam plates look like when you get a lot of paint on them, and then you just toss them. But here's what I like to use. I like to get a surface, in this case, a board. This is a 1/4 inch thick, so it's not very, very thick. It's just thick enough to be sturdy. And this one happens to be a medium density fiber board. They call it MDF. If you go to your home improvement center, that's what you'll look for is MDF. You could also use plywood because they make 1/4 inch plywood. But what you can do is you can buy, usually they will have a bin somewhere in the store where they'll have some of this stuff pre-cut in a couple different sizes. Because if you buy a full sheet of this, that's 8 feet by 4 feet. You know, you need a truck to bring it home. But they will usually have some that's cut in a couple different sizes. For example, here's a piece that's getting a little rough looking, but I brought home from the hardware store, and it's 2 feet by 4 feet. And that way they can just cut 2-foot sections off of a full 8 by 4 sheet of wood. And you can bring, these will fit in your car to bring home, and you can have them cut it for you. You see, I've already marked a line on this, so I can cut it off to a 1-foot strip, because I can cut these myself. But you can have your hardware store or home improvement store cut them for you. So what you can end up with, what I like to use this size, this is a 1 foot across by 2 feet long. So it's a really good size for the table I work on. When I'm working on paintings, I like to lay my paint, if I'm working on a smaller painting, like up to maybe a 16 or by 20 or a 24 by 24, I can lay those flat on my table to paint on them. Or I could put it on a tabletop easel. I don't usually get a standing easel until I get a bigger size. But for my smaller paintings, then I can keep this board right off to the side, and that'll be my palette. And then I'll mix my paint here. I'll put it on the painting over here. Basic stuff, right? But so what do we do with these boards when we get them in the raw wood form like this? I just paint it with gesso. I just put a couple coats of my white gesso on here. You could also use a gray gesso if you wanted sort of a middle value between black and white. That helps you judge values better, but we'll talk about that in a later lesson. But if you want to just cover this with some white gesso and then wrap it in plastic. And the reason we wrap it in this plastic is that when we get a bunch of paint on here, we can just take the plastic off and throw it away and put a new piece of plastic on here, and we've got a surface that's ready to go again. So I just buy this plastic. It's again, you buy it at your paint store, your hardware store. But the only thing you look for here, I buy it in these rolls. They come in different sizes. You can get like a 9 by 12 feet. But I like this for this purpose because it's 3 feet by 50 feet. So it's only 3 feet wide, but it's 50 feet long. So I can just cut pieces off of it to the size I need to wrap my board. So when I get a roll of this, I bring it home and I just start cutting off pieces. See, this is 3 feet across. So I just roll it out, and every foot I just cut off a strip, a little bit more than a foot, so that I can put it on my palette board, and I can basically I can wrap it around like this, and I can tape it as I've done with this one, and it's good to go. You know, it takes you a couple minutes, and you've got a fresh palette, and your board always stays nice and white. Your palette the plastic gets messy. But the board stays nice and white. And the thing about this plastic is that paint, when it's dry, will peel off of this. You can peel your dried acrylic paint off of this. It's kind of fun to do, actually. But and I'll show you how in a later lesson. I'll show you how we do that and what we can do with that paint when we call them paint skins, when you pull them off of your palette. But I keep, because I bought a bigger piece like this one I showed you over here, I've had it cut, and I have several of these boards in my studio already painted white and already wrapped in plastic. So if I'm working and one's starting to fill up with paint, or I'm doing a demo or something, I can just put it aside and get a fresh one. And I have 4 or 5 of these in the studio. So there again, I don't have to slow down when I'm working. Now, you may not have room for something this big, right? If you're working at a small table or something, I understand that some people, that's your circumstance. You can cut these to any size. This could be 1 foot by 1 foot, whatever size you need it to be. Here's another option. You could get one of these canvas boards, called canvas boards or canvas panels, that you can buy at your art supply, or you can get them at your Michael's, Hobby Lobby type places. And these come in different sizes too. They come in real small all the way up to larger. I don't so much like to paint on these because they tend to get a little bowed. As you, I don't know if you can see, this one's already, I haven't even painted on it yet, and it's got a little bit of a bow in it. So I'm not keen so much on using these for painting on, but you can use these as a palette, and you can do exactly what I did with those boards. You could wrap plastic over this thing and tape it and use it as a palette, and then take plastic off, put another piece on. You keep this nice and clean, and you're just disposing of the plastic when you need to. So I think that's a great option for people who are working in limited space. You can also do this with a piece of cardboard, just any piece of cardboard. If it's, it's fairly sturdy, paint it white with your gesso and use that. And then put the plastic over it so that you can reuse it, and use that for your palette. Just a free piece of cardboard will work every bit as well as any of these other things that I've showed you. Now, something else I use if I'm working where I want to be able to move around a little bit, say I've got it working on a vertical piece, on a vertical easel, or over here I have a big paint wall where I can hang big paintings to work on. Sometimes I'll use these disposable food trays, which I'll show you here. These are from, some kind of microwave dinner that you can buy in the grocery store. These are like a healthy choice dinner of some kind. But it's a flexible plastic, and that's the key, because not to get into the chemical makeup of things, but the plastic wrapping stuff that we use and this kind of plastic tend to be a polyethylene. Polyethylene will allow you to peel your acrylic off of it. If you get a polyacrylic like this is more of an acrylic plastic. Well, acrylic will stick to acrylic, so you don't want that for your acrylic painting. But these work fine. And again, I've got fresh ones I haven't used. I have some that I've used for years and years and years. But the thing is, I can peel the dry paint out of them and use them again. Here's one that has some paint on it, and I can peel that paint out of there, and it's kind of fun. It's like when you have a sunburn, and you're peeling that, and you start to peel, and you like pull the skin off yourself. It's like that. But anyhow, those are options. But if you're going to use the plastic sheeting like this, look for this. Look for the thickness of the plastic. This one is 4 mil. You can get it as thin as 0.7 mil, I've seen, which is really like a tissue paper thin, and it tears easy, and it's not, you don't want that. You can get by with a 1 mil, but I really recommend if you can get a package of this 4 mil thick plastic. It's not gonna tear when you're mixing your paint on it. It's gonna be sturdy, and that's what you want. So it's got a nice thickness to it to take care of your, of your work and not have mishaps with your paint mixing. So, that's a lot, isn't it? But I think this is all really useful information, and it's going to help you in terms of making some decisions about how to handle your paint mixing and so forth in your studio or wherever you do your artwork. And these things aren't necessarily so obvious, so it's good to have someone just kind of show you some of this, I think. And these are some things I've figured out along the way over the years, and they've helped me. There's other choices, other solutions. I've seen other solutions. I've tried other solutions that have that are okay. you know, they work for some people. There's also solutions for keeping your paint wet while you're painting, you know, because on these, you know, your paint will dry out, you know, after a while, and they make stay wet palettes that will kind of keep the paint wet, but you're going to be you're going to be mixing on a softer, more, what's the word, more porous surface, because it'll have moisture underneath to keep your paint wet, and those tend to get, I don't know, they tend to fall apart, and I don't like that so much. But you'll see people out there using those kinds of things, and they're fine if that works for you. So I hope this is helpful, and I hope you're enjoying these first strokes of video lessons that I'm bringing to you every week, and I hope you'll keep watching them, and I hope you'll tell your friends and share them, and just keep tuning in, and I'll keep putting these in your inbox every week. All right. So thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a great week painting, and I'll see you next time.